Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1, or should I say Stop and Go F1 Academy, because that's what we're here to talk about today. It feels like it's been a long time since we spoke about F1 Academy, but it is back. Let's start with Race 1, which was supposed to happen yesterday, but the rain was so heavy after F1 qualifying that they postponed it until this morning. On pole, we have Abby pulling Dorian Pan alongside her. The big winner out of all of this, though, is Bianca Bustamante, who had a crash in qualifying and was withdrawn from the race. But because it was postponed to this morning, they had enough time to fix her car up, and she is back in the race. I think she was starting about 14th, though. Someone to watch, though, this entire weekend is the Wildcard, Nina Gademan. Now, I'm a big fan of this Wildcard idea, but thus far it has not been too successful. I don't think any Wildcard driver has scored any points. But Nina Gademan is starting 6th, I believe, in both races here, and did a fantastic job. We'll get more into that as we go along. As the race starts, though, Abby Pulling is able to keep the lead. Marty challenges Pan for P2, but Pan's able to keep it from there. Now, a few false starts notifications coming up here. Dorian Pan is noted, as is Love and Foss and Amna Al-Kabasi. Now, the only replay they actually showed in any detail was that of Dorian Pan, and I watched it and thought, oh, that's not a false start. She'll get away with that one. She didn't. She did get a 5-second penalty. Love and Foss, there was no further investigation, and Amna Al-Kabasi got a 5-second penalty as well. For those last two, I don't know, didn't see him. But from my eye, I didn't see any false start for Pan. Apparently she was moving a little bit before the light, but they got this whole thing now where if the sensor says it's a false start, it's a false start, and there's no real arguing around it. That follows on from what happened to Lando Norris, I think it was in Saudi Arabia, where he was very visually jumping the start, but then the sensor said that he wasn't jumping the start, or something like that. So now they've got new sensors or whatever, and the false start is a false start. They're cranking down all these false starts, and Dorian Pan suffered there for it because she was in 2nd place. There's a fantastic battle for her back between Noble's block and Hamna Al-Kabasi, all for P7. Now, on the final lap, Al-Kabasi is properly squeezed into turn 1, but is able to get past, who was it? I think it was Leah Block. Able to get past Leah Block for P8. And that's all really the action that happened in race 1. As we cross the line, it is Abby Pulling who wins her 5th win of the season. Marty in 2nd, Vug in 3rd. The wild card is in 4th place. That is Nina Gademan. Fantastic results for her there. Dorian Pan crossed the line in 2nd, but gets pushed down to 5th. Chloe Chambers is 6th. Noble 7th. Hamna Al-Kabasi in 8th. Leah Block is 9th. And then it was Schroeder. I always pronounce her name wrong, but she was 10th place. You see, the thing is with these cars is they're not very fast, and there's no real aerodynamic stuff on the car at all. There's definitely no DRS or KERS system. So when we come to a track like this where overtaking is difficult, it's even more difficult in these cars than it would be in a car you would see from Formula 1, Formula 2 or Formula 3. So, yeah, I think there's lots of stuff that is wrong with F1 Academy. Firstly, it is the cars are just generally too slow. Secondly, I think they need systems like DRS because that's where open wheel racing is at the minute, especially in Europe, where you need a DRS type system. The 2 races we had today would have been massively improved by people having DRS because we'll see, especially in race 2, but in race 2 you had someone like Nobles who was a lot slower than the rest of the pack, but yes, no one could do anything because they couldn't get past. In the end, the only way they could get past was to hit her off the track, which obviously is not what we want to see. We'll get into that in a little bit. So let's start looking at race 2 though, because here we have Dorian Pan on pole with Abby Pulling alongside, and this brings up another issue of Formula 1 Academy, because this is the first time this season that we have had a different pole sitter on race 1 to race 2 in the same weekend of F1 Academy. And I think I said this in every single F1 Academy video I have done, but the way they work out qualifying is ridiculous. I hate it so much because basically what it is your fastest lap times determine the grid, I believe, for race 1, but then you take everyone's second fastest lap time, and that determines the grid for race 2. And basically what happens is, 9 times out of 10, they're pretty much exactly the same, which leads to exactly the same race. But also what this means is when you're actually watching qualifying live, there's nothing there to tell you what everyone's first and second fastest lap times are. So you really don't know what the grid is going to be until you turn up to race 2, because they don't tell you. Luckily, it's always the same, so it doesn't matter. But, we have a perfect system that we use in F2 and F3 to decide the grids of the sprint and the feature, where they reverse the top 10 or top 12 for F3. With Formula 1 Academy, there is less drivers, so, you could just do the top 6 or the top 8 is reversed, but it gives a more variety-filled racing all the time, and it allows drivers who are maybe a little bit slower to have those moments where they have to defend to go into there as well. So my two big complaints with F1 Academy, and I want to say now, I do like F1 Academy, and I think it's good, and I think it's fantastic that there are really good drivers such as Dorian Pan and Abby Pulling, and Chloe Chambers as well has been very good this year, who are getting that platform to perform on the world stage, and hopefully we will see them progress into Formula 3, Formula 2 next year or the year after. But there are issues here. Mostly the cars are wrong. They're too slow. They don't have the benefits that other cars have. And then that qualifying idea is just ridiculous. I don't like it at all. So if we're changing anything for next year, the number one thing for me would be changing the qualifying. But number 2, make the cars quicker. Just give them a Formula 3 car. Why not, eh? Let's see how that goes. Anyway, as we start this race, so it's a bad start for Abby Pulling, who falls back to 3rd as Maya Vung moves up to take 2nd. Leah Block stalls on the grid further down, but Dorian Pan up front is able to keep the lead. So we have Nina Gademan, who is the wildcard, as you already said. She is in 5th place and is chasing down 4th place, which is Nobles, but has Hamna Al-Khabaisi all over the back of her. This is a fantastic battle here for 4th place. Hamna goes for a move, but has a huge lockup. Is able to keep it on the track, is still able to give Gademan enough space to keep both cars on the track. As they come round the side of turn 1, they're basically neck and neck, but Gademan's able to take that place back. Fantastic driving from both of them, especially considering that Al-Khabaisi had a lockup, but was still able to control it into the corner. Really good stuff there. Fantastic battling. So Gademan having a lot of little lockups as she goes along now, the tyres heating up. But again, this is the thing where you have no DRS on a track like this where it's hard to overtake. Nobles was obviously the slower car, but because of that track position, never really able to get past, especially in a series like this where everyone basically has the same car and it's up to your setup and your driving ability. When you have a thing like this where it's just you have that track position, you have the exact same straight line speed, there's not really much you can do here, and that's what we saw. Eventually, though, Gademan goes for this big move down the inside of that straight in the middle section. Now, from the helicopter shot, which is what we saw when we saw it live, it looked like Gademan went down the inside, then Nobles basically just closed the door on her, and the two of them hit and then carried on. Gademan goes through, as does Al-Khabaisi, whilst Nobles is able to get back on the track. Thankfully, no damage to either car, but Nobles loses 2 positions. So from that initial shot, I was like, well, that's obviously Nobles' fault. But then, from the onboards they showed on the replay and the the trackside cameras, it did look like Gademan probably has carried a bit too much speed going into that corner, into that dive bomb, where Nobles went out a bit more wide and then cut back. There was nowhere really she could go, and this does end up with a penalty going to Nina Gademan, 10-second penalty for causing a collision. But the thing is here, what else was she going to do? Because she had to get past, And she just couldn't because of the way these cars are set up, because of the way the cars are made. She was never ever going to get past realistically here. So she has to go for that kind of outlandish move, which ends up causing a collision. That was the only way it was ever going to end, realistically. Because, that was on lap 9 of 17, and then I have no more notes, because nothing happened. And as we cross the line, it is Dorian Pan who takes the win. Maya Vug gets P2, a podium there in her home race, second podium of the weekend. Abby Pulling settles for third place. She was very close to Vug at the end, but once again, very difficult to overtake. And also, she's in a championship battle, and she's probably just going, it's easier for me to finish third, take the points, and go for a big risk and end up having a collision. Hamna Al-Khabaisi is in fourth, Nobles fifth, Schreider sixth, Levenfoss seventh, Marty eighth, Houseman in ninth, then Nina Gademan finishes in 10th after that 10-second penalty, dropping her down to 10th place, so she still picks up 1 point there. Bianca Bustamante was in 11th, missing out by 0.098, so very close there for what was an interesting weekend of F1 Academy. I certainly won't say it was the best F1 Academy race we've ever seen, but there was some fun little battles in there and some very good driving. The star of F1 Academy for me this week is Nina Gademan. Despite that penalty, despite the collision, she was still the one that stood out for me as the star. Just because we've seen a few wildcards come through now and just not be very good and not really do anything. This was the first time a wildcard turned up and was like, oh no, I'm going to make a name for myself here this weekend, which is the point of what the wildcard is all about. And I would not be surprised if Nina Gademan was in F1 Academy full-time next year, because I thought she was absolutely fantastic. To be in this car that she's never driven before, qualified 6th, finished 4th in the first race, finished 4th on track in the second race. Fantastic stuff from her. Definitely the star for me. And I think she could have a big future if she joins F1 Academy next year. There you go. That is all things F1 Academy for this weekend. I think the next race they have is Singapore, which should be a very interesting one. Well, I love Singapore. And we don't normally see Junior Series' drive there. So that could be very interesting. As for the rest of the day, you might not know this, but there's an F1 race on later today, and we'll have all the coverage of that as soon as the race is over right here on the channel. So make sure you subscribe for that one. Shout out to our members, by the way, because I forgot to say that before. Dakota, The Joyce James, Robin Myers, and Sarah Strubble are the members. If you want to become a member, there is a link in the description. I will see you next time, though. Until then, have a good one. Goodbye.